life is so unpredictable, and a lot of times I think that we feel like it's happening to us, like it's only happening to us and poor me. And you can kind of get this victim attitude, and that's fair. But on the ranch, it's like that just happens and it's nobody's fault, and you just got to keep going. So I started writing, and it became this story about the ranch, but also my motherhood journey.
Hello, and welcome to Living Her Legacy, a podcast that celebrates and serves mamas who are choosing to live their best life after starting their family. I'm your host, Jill Sutton, and thank you so much for joining today. As always, follow along on social media. You can find me on Instagram at Jill G. Sutton or at Living Her Legacy Podcast. You can also find the podcast on YouTube at Living Her Legacy. If you guys missed last week's episode, go back and listen. Courtney has a special offer at the end of it, and I'll link it here in the show notes as well. She is offering a discount to Living Her Legacy listeners. And so definitely check that out. Don't miss out on that opportunity. On the podcast today, we have Kelcie Martin, and I am so excited for you guys to hear our conversation. She is fearlessly honest about her journey. She is one who grew up on a 40,000 acre cattle ranch, which is just mind blowing, and then had premature twins during the pandemic. Her story is unique in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways, it is very relatable to the struggles that we've all gone through. And she's someone who's actually okay with voicing those struggles and sharing those struggles in order to really just help the community around her. She is currently finished with her first novel, which will be set to release in November. So I'm very excited to get this podcast out. You can start following her journey. Definitely find the links below to follow her story, but I hope you enjoy. Hello, Kelcie. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here. I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself, maybe where you're from and what you're doing now.
Okay, so it's a long story, but I actually grew up in eastern Colorado on a 40,000 acre cattle ranch. And I kind of like didn't realize what a huge impact it had on me until I became a mother. If you are from a small town, like there are so many expectations on you, and everybody knows who you are. So I was the top of my class. I did all the things: FFA, 4-H, knowledgeable, three-sport athlete, and that kind of carried over into my adult life. And I just kept pushing through. I got a bachelor's degree and became a teacher, and then I got a double master's degree. And I feel like when I had my twins is when things really like changed. I had a miscarriage in um, April of 2020, and immediately after, I got pregnant with my twin boys. And from then on, it was just like it has been on since the day that I got pregnant with him. I was sick for like 3 months, and then they were born early at 28 weeks. So they were about 3 months early. And like I said, it kind of was just like this huge slap in the face because I had just done everything right in my life, and everything seemed on the outside like what people dreamed of, the perfect life. And they were like, "No more, mom." Like they're like, "Forget that life." And I think it changed me in the best way possible. It was super hard, but when they were born early, it was during the lockdowns when they happened, kind of a second round in that November. And so we didn't really have much help, me and my husband. And um, I would say the best way I could describe it is I had been in survival mode from 2020 on.
Hmm.
My husband was working as a firefighter, and he was dealing with a lot just with our kids being born, and then working with drug abuse, child abuse, obviously a lot of sick people. And after that, he found out that he had PTSD and he had to go to therapy. So I was really holding our family together. which I think a lot of moms do. And after all of that happened and he was in a better place, I kind of was just sitting there like, there's literally nothing left for me. Like,
Mm,
I don't even know like what I want to do.
mm,
Um, and I really wanted to write a book, but I couldn't tell you the reason why. I just was like, for lack of better words, grasping at something to feel that was mine. And actually ended up working with a life coach. And, she kind of brought up a lot of things. You don't really have anything for yourself. And she was asking a lot of hard questions. Are you happy at your job? What do you do for fun? And when you ask a mom what they do for fun or like what their hobbies are, it's like there's like I watch Netflix and fall asleep on the couch. Um, so that's kind of where my journey began, and I started writing. And in college, I wrote in a creative writing class about my life on the ranch because I feel like at that point, when I was 18 years old, that was the most exciting thing that had ever happened to me. But I started writing about that, and then it became more reflections on motherhood and how it's relatable to being on a ranch because life is so unpredictable, and a lot of times I think that we feel like it's happening to us, like it's only happening to us and poor me. And you can kind of get this victim attitude, and that's fair. But on the ranch, it's like that just happens and it's nobody's fault, and you just got to keep going. So I started writing, and it became this story about the ranch, but also my motherhood journey. Um, and then during that, I accidentally wrote a children's book, which I just published in June. And the memoir has been like my passion project, and it's like my therapy project.
mm.
And what's funny is I'll share this on this podcast. I just got out of my first therapy session this morning, which I think is why I was a little bit like discombobulated because seriously, writing about your life and your story brings up feelings that you didn't know were there. And I think on the outside, a lot of people see my success and they see the happy parts, but when you're working on yourself, there's a lot of very hard things that we have to deal with. Even though our life is moving in a positive direction, it leaves you a different person. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, I'm not that person I was even a year ago.
Mm,
My husband isn't the same person. And so I said, I've got to go to therapy and realize like how do I need to mix the past in a healthy way? How can I let the things go that hurt me, but keep the things that made me a stronger person? So I know that was kind of a long introduction, but that's why I'm here. That's the
I
gist of my
love it.
story.
I love it. No, I thank you for sharing because I do think that your story, maybe not everybody is a, rancher, but I do feel like it's very relatable. This is very relatable. We all kind of live this like we do all the things, we check all the boxes, right? And
Mhm.
then something happens outside of our control. And a lot of times that is motherhood, right?
Mhm.
We kind of
Yep.
all of a sudden like we can't make them behave, we can't make them well, we can't make them, and that's hard. It's a hard reality to face. And I think no, I think you hit the nail on the head with just kind of going through that. You spoke on so many things and I love that. I think I'm sorry for your loss as far as a miscarriage. I know that's a very hard thing to go through, and then to think having twins right after that and premature twins. How long were they in the NICU for?
They were in the NICU, for 67 days.
Mm,
I don't think any NICU parent ever forgets the day. By the way, September is NICU Awareness Month, so I'm
amazing.
excited to talk about it. What a coincidence, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but also we had to travel because, the higher level NICU, and I think that added a whole element of just feeling alone, and especially no one else could visit at the time but us. So,
Because it
yeah,
was
that
during
was rough.
pandemic. Yeah.
Yes.
I also had a 2020 baby, so I feel your pain as far as that.
Yep.
Thankfully, it was my second, so at least I kind of had gone through it once before.
Right.
But you really your heart breaks for all those mamas that had to
Mhm.
kind of traverse this very like new territory alone. A lot of people
Mhm.
had to do it alone, a lot of appointments by yourself, ultrasounds by yourself, things like that. So, um, are they healthy?
Yeah, they are really healthy. One thing that we are going through right now, which has added to my stress, is they aren't talking. So just on top of everything, I think everyone can relate to having to deal with the waits after COVID, like getting the
Mm,
evaluations they need and getting the help that they need to get where they need to be. But at this point, like I said, motherhood, like some of it you can't control. And
mhm,
I've been at a point of peace lately where I'm like, it's going to figure itself out and we're doing all that we can do. They get to start early preschool in the state that I live in. So they get to get services and
mm,
get some time away from mom and dad. Cause I don't know if all kids are like this or just pandemic babies, but they are so comfortable here and they've never really had to have that like being out in the world. I mean, they do, but with mom and dad. So
mhm, mhm.
I think it'll be good for both me and dad and the boys to have that opportunity.
I definitely agree. I am one that I did the stay at home mom thing and realized that's not my cup of tea. We have a better relationship if they're away for a little bit at a time. And yeah, that works. You kind of have to find what works good for your family. I love that they offer services. I'm a PT by background. So I know a lot of people that were in like early childhood education doing speech and OT and PT and everything like that. So that'll be great that they have access to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so I'm surprised when you said today was your first therapy session because when you wrote about, you said you started writing about your life in that dark place, right? In that kind
Mhm.
of postpartum place, you started writing. And that, in my mind, feels like an assignment from a therapist. Like someone would say to you, let's start writing about, whatever, write it down, get it out on paper. What kind of spurred you to start writing about your life?
Um, Gosh. Well, when I was in college in that creative writing class, I kind of you don't realize that your experience is unique until you're around different people. And that was kind of the first time that I was around people that didn't know the rural living or the type of person that it kind of makes you become. Um, but I've learned that, like, after I started a blog before this really kicked off. And, women and mothers were really like relating to the things I was saying.
Mm,
And a lot of my stories had to do with what I learned when I was working with my dad, because we did work with mamas and babies. And,
mm,
I don't like to compare people to cows, but, you kind of learn that nature is just so hard. Like the world is a hard place. And I think as humans, we see this image online and we think like that's how it's supposed to be,
mm,
and when you don't live up to that, it feels like you did something wrong or it
mhm,
feels really catastrophic. And, I came from this background where I saw life and death in harmony. And I knew what could happen. I knew I was not sheltered from those aspects of life, and I started sharing my stories and people were like, "You're right, like, I don't have to be the perfect mom. I don't have to do everything all at once every single day." And I think that I just realized I had a valuable insight from the way that I grew up, because a lot of us, especially the generations growing up right now, they only see that picture, this picture perfect life where nothing ever goes wrong. And unfortunately, that's just not how the world is, as you know, and motherhood especially. And I think it's just hard to see your heart walking outside of you and trying not to control every aspect of that and just realizing there's only so much you can do. So
Mm,
I think that's kind of why I started writing my story because, my life coach was like, someone's gonna love this. Not everyone will love this, but there's gonna be somebody that you help. And these words stuck with me. She said, you not telling your story is an injustice to people outside of your circle.
mhm,
Because there's somebody that's struggling that just wants to relate to someone. And
mhm,
so that really stuck with me. And on my worst days when I have imposter syndrome so bad, that's what I think of is you're doing an injustice by not sharing your story.
mhm. Yeah, I've heard a phrase similar to that where it's like you're holding others back when you don't use your gift, right?
Right,
Your message may impact someone else to be the next whatever, right? And it
right,
might be just one little thing that you say from your experience. I really feel like too your message is a message that will break chains. Just like you
right.
said, growing up in a rural town, you had everybody knew you. Everybody knew your family. They knew
Yeah,
what you failed at, they knew what you succeeded at. And to have that kind of pressure on you growing up is really hard. My husband's from a small town and we actually still live in the same small town. And thankfully it has grown, but like I can see some of the things that were a challenge for him because there were these expectations on him. There were these like pressures and to perform a certain way, and that shapes you. But I think
mhm,
just like you said, motherhood is messy, and it's kind of you can kind of breathe like a sigh of relief, like no one can control it. No one can, make it a certain way. And I think knowing that like gives you kind of that sense of peace, like, okay, I don't have to be perfect. It's such a
right.
different message that we're getting from the world, from society, right?
Exactly. I agree with you.
So tell me, how long have you been writing this book and when is it coming out?
So I started last November. It's actually a challenge because I had to force myself to just write the book.
Hmm.
That's the hardest part is starting. And the challenge is you write 50,000 words in the month of November. It's called NaNoWriMo. And so I said, that's the only way I'm going to do this because I kept trying several times before, but I was trying to write the perfect book.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you just have to write randomness. You just have to let it all out. And putting that time constraint on myself forced me to kind of just get it out on paper. So yeah, I started last November and it's just been a huge journey because you're not done after you write it. I've had to self edit. I've hired other professionals that you have to work with. And honestly, that's been one of the coolest parts about it is all of the people I meet like you online, and every new person is a new connection and it brings just a different perspective every time. And I think that's been the best part about writing a book. A lot of people think that it's the end product and the sales and maybe being a bestseller, but it's really the connections that you make and the people that you help. So I am currently waiting for my proofreader to get her last run of reading it. So it has been through many, many drafts. And after this, it will open for pre orders in October.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
yeah, and then it will officially release around the end of November, which is
Wow.
kind of cool because November is when my boys were born. It's also Preemie Awareness Month, so it kind of is just like all fell into the right date and perfect timing, and I'm really excited for everyone to read it. I'm also really nervous for everyone to read it. It's just a really big ball of emotions that I have right now, and I can't believe that it's almost to that point.
I feel like that's a common feeling for most creators is this like you want to create, like you love to create, you want to make something, you want to write, you want to do this. And then as soon as it's time to like put it out into the world, you're like, wait, I don't want anyone to see this. but
I
like,
know.
so it's kind of like this inner battle every time. And that is really exciting. I can't imagine writing a book right now. I've had another guest who wrote a book, and I'm just like, the amount of work I can only fathom like a little bit of like what actually all goes into it.
Absolutely.
Now, let's kind of go back because we talked about you started writing, and there was a time in your life when you were like, I don't even know what I want. Like, I don't even know what's for me anymore. Right. And I think this is kind of not the point of my podcast, but really like where I want mamas to see that like life doesn't just end with having kids. Like that's kind of a launching point for a lot of
Mhm.
women, to find like a new passion or to find something that they love and to be able to pour themselves into like a new venture. So that's really exactly what you did, right? You had this period of time where you were crucial to the lives of your little ones, and then there was like, okay, there's a little breathing room and some time for me to start writing and to start meeting with other professionals in this field and things like that. Um, I just think like having something for yourself and having something that you're doing and your kids can see that is so important, right?
Yeah. And this is a hard question of how I started to do it for myself. Um, I actually didn't ever think I was good at writing. Um, and that creative writing teacher, I kind of like disregarded him. I was just kind of like I kind of felt like he was making stuff up to make me feel good. Like
Like placating you, like,
yeah, like it was creative writing 101, and I do write about this in my book a little bit. I was a science major. So I just was like head to the grindstone working every day. And
mhm,
they had beaten the creativity out of me in the best way possible because I was doing some great things with a science degree, but I was just like, this class is pointless. Like I just don't have time for this. And I kind of thought back to it because he told me I should write a book about the stories of my childhood. And like I said, I was like 19. So I was like, whatever, hippie dude. Like, again, I'm from a small town, and like this guy, I talk about him. He had like long hair. He dressed differently than I was used to. Like, I was raised by a cowboy. He literally wore the same outfit every day. And so I could just see my family being like, don't listen to what he says, you know?
right?
And so I look back and I was like, maybe he was right. Maybe he, because my life coach says, why would he just say that? Like, people don't just say that you should write a book.
Yeah, that's not a
And
common one.
yeah, and I was like, okay. And so I started to do it. And I think I just realized that this was the first thing in my life that I had really done for myself because truthfully, becoming a teacher and getting a career and getting the science degree, I did that to make my parents proud. You
Mhm,
know,
mhm.
um, they really worked hard to put me through school. And and I'm not mad about it, but I think when you're so young, you don't know what you want. And it's weird because people say, I don't know who I am anymore after I had kids. And of course you don't. Like, you're literally a changed person. But truthfully, I think my kids made the message crystal clear for me because I wanted them to see me happy and
Mm, mhm.
see me successful because I do know a lot of people my age are trying to find themselves after their parents lived for them their entire life,
Yeah.
like my mom is about to graduate my brother and he's the last one in the house, and she's trying to figure out like what do I want now, you know?
Mm,
And we have this generation of women who are very strong women who went through a lot, and they live for their kids, and I don't think that's a bad thing, but I don't want to be sitting with my husband when my kids are gone and say, "What do we do now?" or lose my marriage because I didn't have anything that fulfilled me.
Mhm, mhm,
Because even though kids are a lot of work and 18 years seems like a really long time, it's not. And when they go off and do their own thing, we have to have something for ourselves, and I don't
mhm,
want to be resentful or regretful for the things that I did when they were growing up, you know? And if they see that I filled my cup, I want them to fill theirs too. And I do think that I looked at my parents just always grinding, and I think a lot of our generation had parents like that, and I thought, like, "That's what I have to do.
mhm,
I just have
mhm.
to work hard, keep making more money. I've gotta do all of the activities for my kids, be there for them all the time, and I think our generation is really breaking these chains, like you said, trying to just balance those 2 things so that our kids grow up with a healthy relationship of work and their dreams and all of that, so, yeah. That it's
That
heavy to talk about.
Yeah, that could probably be an episode all in itself because I feel that. I feel that. There's a lot of people that it is like once you get to that point, you have to maintain something for yourself. And I want to also talk about like holding space for change. And that's something that you talked about when your husband had PTSD. Like, we're going to change as individuals, right? And we're going to change in our marriage, we're going to change in ourselves. And so being able to allow your significant other that time and space to change and see who they are. I think that is something that is hard on marriages, but something that's also so important to be able to, you know, yeah, I was a teacher and I don't want to do that anymore. I don't have the passion for that anymore. I was a physical therapist for 10 years and then the pandemic hit. I, changed careers. I'm doing something completely different now. And now I'm podcasting. Like, my life is totally different than it was a few years ago, right? But I think allowing for that change and that space and that growth is super important in a relationship.
Yeah, and, like, lately, so I started working from home, a year ago, so I took an online teaching position, and it is completely different. Um, I'm not as involved, and even in a year, I had to do that for my family, and I think we think, like, you have to stay there for the 30 years or because in my mind, when I was 22 and I walked into that classroom, I loved it so much that I said, "I'm gonna be here for 30 years and I'm gonna retire." And
Mhm.
I think you just, like, get that in your mind and you think if you change, it's a bad thing. But even now I'm talking to my husband, I'm like, "I just don't know how long this is gonna last," because every season of your life is different. I mean, right now, the boys are about to start school, um, and, he goes, "We'll go back. I'm in a better head place. If you wanna go
Mhm.
back, you can go
Mhm.
back." And I'm like, "I don't know if I wanna go back, and what if I take off with this book and I really wanna write another children's book?"
Mhm.
But I think it's, like, getting out of that mentality that you have to decide now. Like,
Mhm.
just take it one day at a time, and there's always gonna be something out there for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I struggle with that because I am just like the oldest daughter. They call me the family manager. Like I just have always had my life like figured out what I want, what I'm going to do. And I think that's what kids have done to me is made me realize you got to take it day at a time and it's going to change literally like every year.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I mean, the newborn phase to toddler phase is like a whole different ball game. So,
It is. It is. And just like you said, you have no idea where this book is going to take you. Like once
right.
it's released, I mean, who knows what doors it's going to open. And I think just being mindful that there's opportunity out there, that there's never just one route. And I think, again, that's such a hard mentality to break, especially as we grew up. Like, both my parents had careers that they stayed in for a long time. I was a physical therapist and I thought I had a lot of guilt that I had to work through where I was like, I paid for this doctorate degree and I used it for a decade. And now what? Like, it feels wasteful, to not
Mhm.
be using it, but it's it's served its purpose. I feel like, it's served its
Right.
purpose in my life. That's hard to explain to people that are like, wait, you're not a therapist anymore. Like, wait, you're not treating patients anymore. Cause when you say something like I'm pursuing like entrepreneurship or I'm going to write a book, people are probably like, okay, what else are you going to do? Right.
Right.
They get kind of that you get these remarks that really kind of, I don't know, if you're not strong in what you're doing, can really be intimidating and feel like you're right, I'm not doing enough or whatever. But
Right.
I think it's also surrounding yourself with the people that are pursuing these things as well. And I think that's something that I've loved about this podcast is I'm around all these women that are pursuing something or starting a business, starting a company, writing a book, and they're doing all these things to just see like what's out there, and I think the only way is if you kind of jump off and do them, right?
I agree.
So let's talk about how this came about. Thank you so much for the package. I got to read it with my 3-year-old during Sunday nap time, and she slept with it. She takes every book
Oh,
that we read and sleeps with it in the crib. But let's talk about it because this was kind of a happy accident, right?
yeah. So it happened last November during the challenge when I was trying to write my book. And by the way, my memoir is about me writing my book as well. So it's a story about a story. And during that time of the challenge, I was very stressed. The boys were having ear infection after ear infection, and then they got RSV during the
Mm,
month of the challenge. It always works like that.
yep. Hmm.
And we had just spent the night in the ER, and I was like, I'm done. I had like 2,000 words I had to write left, and we went for a walk. It was November in Colorado, so it was just like the perfect temperature. And, sometimes I say if you've got something going on, like go for a walk. Don't have your music on, don't have anything
Hmm.
on,
Hmm.
just like a walk. And I had the first lines of that book, Little Cowpoke, Little Cowpoke. And they just kept repeating in my head. And if there are any writers listening to this, your best ideas always come to you when you don't have anything with you. So I'm like, "Oh, no." And so basically what I did the entire walk is I kept, like, repeating it over and over because I was like, "Don't forget it, don't forget it." And I came inside and I got my pen out and I wrote it by hand, which I usually just type. But I wrote it in, like, 15 minutes.
Mm.
And so I was sitting there and I had a rough draft of a novel, my memoir, and then I had a rough draft of a children's book, and I'm like, "Why am I like this?" And I think that just describes to women, like, I think there are so many things we wanna do and we feel like you have to do one, and I was like, "Why not do them both?" And honestly, I've found so much, it has been so fun to do a children's book because I am a teacher, and I think it kind of brought back that feeling of getting to be a part of kids' childhood and
Mm.
getting to see them at book signings and, like, they wanna take a picture of me. I dress up in, like, my Western attire, and, like, little kids love a cowboy hat.
Oh
They
yeah.
see that, and they're, like, so excited, and I think that has made me even more excited to move forward in my author journey because after this book, it has been very heavy. Obviously, I'm in
Mm.
therapy right now, like, it has been very heavy, but the children's book, I'm like, I think that's what I'm gonna do next because I need something really light to kind of just cleanse myself from all of those hard feelings, and then I don't know what's next. Like, I really wanna this is podcasting. I've been asked to be, like, a public speaker, and I write for a paper now. And I kinda just wanna see where all of these little journeys take me and be okay with it. Like, I don't have to just write novels, I don't have to just do this, I can do all the things that represent who I am. So I'm really excited to see where this journey takes me after my memoir release.
I think sometimes having no agenda leaves you open to opportunity, right?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I struggle with that same thing as well, where I want to do everything all at once. And And it's not what you're kind of taught. You're taught to like, hey, go after one thing, be successful in that, build your following, whatever, and then branch off, And I'm like,
Mhm.
no, I'm gonna just start 10 things right now. Like,
Yeah,
but
and
I
some
also think
people thrive that way.
yeah, what suits you, what completes you, what fulfills you, you want to fill your life with those things. So as your values change, you find and you align with the things that you want to do. And I think
Mhm.
that's just fine. I love that. You did answer one of my questions. I actually was going to say, what's next for you? So it's up in the air, right? We'll find out.
Yeah, I really have had a lot of interest because I'm pretty transparent about my journey. And I think my biggest reason why is because I do feel like I was lied to about a lot of things. Not in a bad way. I just think like, again, that mentality that everything's honky dory and it's fine. And so I've just been really transparent about literally everything, my motherhood journey and becoming an author. Like I
Mm-hmm.
share all of that on my social media platforms and the struggles and the excitement. And through that, people have seen interest of like they really want to workshop with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, kind of see like what I did or my hangups or how I got through a certain thing. So next year I really, really want to try to have like a retreat or like a day long workshop with other women and do something small like that just to get to connect with more people because
Mm-hmm.
that's probably where my next idea will come from because talking to like-minded women always gets the wheels turning,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
always talk about in my book, I talk about perspective, and the more perspective you have, the more successful you'll be, and I think we all get kind of stuck in our homes on our own devices, but when you really talk to other people doing the things that you're interested in, they're just gonna help you grow as a person. So that's my biggest goal is to meet more people and help more people.
Yeah, I love the idea of a retreat. That is actually something I've thought about myself is like, how can I get something like that together? And I think again in the lines of like mamas doing something for themselves, taking like
Mhm.
a weekend away and being able to like meet up, get a little bit pampered, get encouraged, get inspired. I think that's amazing. And I feel like that would be so fun to try to coordinate, but like it's kind of getting those pieces together, right?
Yeah.
To get that into reality. What would you say, Kelsey, does it mean to you to be living in your legacy?
This question was hard for me because I remember answering it in writing, and I'm usually better, obviously, in the written word than I am the spoken word. Um, but when I started writing, I knew that, you know, really powerful women have written things and they live on forever. And I wanted my boys and their families to, see my story and our story as a family because your words are never lost. Your words and your knowledge, no one can ever take away from you. And that's very important to me. And I knew that writing a book, my words would live on, whether anybody liked them or not. And I think that's like my biggest mantra to other women who want to go after what they want to do. It matters if you like it, you
Mhm,
know?
mhm.
You want that legacy to be yours, and it doesn't really matter if anybody else likes it or not. Um, because the right people are going to find you and the right people are going to find it helpful. So I just wanted to leave that for my kids because they deserve that. And I think it will help them be successful and realize that anything is possible. If their mom could do it, they could do it. And I don't ever want them to have a victim mentality or feel like they can't do something because of somebody else. My mom was a very successful scholar, and I never thought she was a bad mom because she was in school. Yeah. Like I have to look back at those things and realize like I'm really proud of her and I'm glad she did that for herself. And I hope that as generations go on, we can keep building these legacies for our kids, so that they know that they are important in this world. And hopefully make a world where people love themselves again.
Mm,
Um, and I think that's really important.
yeah. Oh, I really agree. I love that. Um, you spoke on a couple things. One, as far as like doing something that you love because you love it, not because you're trying to please somebody or fix somebody or whatever, and I've heard the phrase, um, if you try to be for everybody, you end up being for nobody, right? You
Mhm,
can't please everybody. And so you
mhm,
do just have to kind of reach deep down and figure out what it is that you know, want to do, want to create. Just like you said, your book is the way you want to write it, and people are going to find it you know, that love it. And that's going to be kind of the start of that tribe, right?
mhm,
I think that's really important. And I love just also, like you said, like leaving something that's going to go on forever. And I think, I don't know if podcasting will last forever. I mean, written word is so much more, has more history to it. We know, that written word stays around, but yeah, I also I have two daughters and I want them to see like that. Yeah, I did something, I made connections. Um, brought a message out to people to, like you said, enjoy their life, find something that they love, and be able to live for themselves. Kelcie, where can we find you?
So I am on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, and that's where all my information on my releases is going to be. And all of my ats and all of my handles are at Cowpokes Who Cry. That is the name of my upcoming book, but it is also the name of my publishing company because I am self-published. So all of my books will be under that name, which is really exciting because it's mine.
That's so cool. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'll link those below. And then when the book comes out, where will people be able to find that?
It will be available on my website, which I will post those on my social media pages.
Hmm.
Because I'm doing signed copies and like fun little swag bags for all my fans. But after that, it'll be available on Amazon.
Okay. And then how about the kids' book?
That is also only on Amazon right now because I'm very busy and don't have time to ship those out to you right now.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, it is available on Amazon in both paperback and hardback versions.
So cool. Well, Kelcie, I want to just thank you so much for being on the podcast today and sharing your story. Like I said early on, I really feel like it's impactful. It is um, breaking chains, right? It's breaking those thoughts and ideas that we have about ourselves. And I really appreciate it. I cannot wait for your book to come out.
Right on. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining today. I really hope that you enjoyed that conversation that I had with Kelcie. Thank you so much for joining today. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with Kelcie. I am going to link I am going to put a link below in the show notes and description. It is a live link for pre-orders for her memoir and also the link for her book on Amazon, her kids book, which my kids absolutely love. Thank you so much for joining today. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Kelcie. Like I said, she's just very honest about her journey and is willing to kind of dive deep into the dark parts of her life. And I do believe that hearing about other mamas' struggles, that we all kind of share similar struggles, is very freeing. And I really thank Kelcie for her honesty. I am going to link below in the show notes and description a live link that she gave us for pre-orders for her book. I'm also going to link the Amazon link to her children's book, which my girls absolutely love. So definitely pick yourself up a copy, especially if you have a kid interested in any of the cowboy or cowgirl type of things. It is one to be enjoyed. Thank you again for joining, and I will see you next week with a solo episode from me.